Crash is definitely one of the most treasured PlayStation franchises, next to Spyro, but ever since Naughty Dog lost the rights to the Bandicoot and moved on to Jak and Daxter, new developers took the wheel on developing Crash games with varying degrees of success. But when Crash was going multi-platform, he had a little bit of life on Nintendo's new handheld, the Gameboy Advance. Crash had a pretty good lifespan on the GBA, having 5 games on the console, 2 of them being platformers, 2 being ports, and the last one being a minigame collection, but we'll get to that one later. Anyway, we have a lot to go through, so let's go through every single game one by one, starting with Crash Bandicoot, The Huge Adventure, also known as Crash Bandicoot XS in Europe and Australia. Alright, let's start with the story. Uka Uka yells at Cortex for his incompetence, but Cortex has a plan to shrink the entire world down, and now it's up to Crash to collect all the crystals and defeat Cortex. It's basically the same Crash Bandicoot plot from other games. Yeah, let's just get into this. Huge Adventure and N-Tranced are basically just Crash 2 and 3, but in 2D. But it's not necessarily a bad thing because these games actually really work around the less powerful technology with the Game Boy Advance. The main way from going level to level is by the warp room from Crash 3, but instead of 5 warp rooms with 25 levels, there's 4 warp rooms with 20 levels, which I find kind of weird, but it's not that big of a deal. Just like before, there's a boss at the end of every world ready to beat you, and they're not really that great. Crash games never really had intricate boss fights to begin with, but I felt like the boss fights here were kinda underwhelming. Dingodile was alright, he wasn't too hard or too easy. Engine is the best boss in the game since it's basically pretty much the same boss from Crash 3, but just not as many hit points. Tiny Tiger was pathetic and I'm pretty sure I can beat him blindfolded, and Cortex was the most underwhelming boss in the game. Honestly, I don't really know what to expect at this point. Once you beat every boss, you unlock a new power-up just like in Crash 3, and all the power-ups are from Crash 3 except for the Fruit Bazooka, but I don't really mind that they got rid of it because the level design doesn't really have any spots when you're gonna need it, but other than that, they're all here. The double jump, the death tornado spin, the super body slam, and the crash dash. Although there's a couple of gripes that I have with the power-ups, but I'll get to that later. Anyway, there's 3 types of levels in this game. There's the normal platforming levels, the underwater levels, and the flight levels. The platforming levels are what you would expect from Crash at this point. You can jump, spin, slide, it's all here. But the slide and slide jump can be very finicky at times. And the slide is alright, it gives you the speed that you would expect, and the slide jump still works. But I don't know if it was just me, but every single time I would use it near the edge of a cliff, Crash just sort of slides off the edge of the platform, which happens to me a lot when I was playing the game. I know it just looks like I'm just bad at the game, but why would the hell would I feel like running off the edge of a cliff? And this slide issue would happen to me numerous times when I was streaming this game. Bro, I swear to God, freaking jump never wants to register. Oh yeah, I should probably mention that I actually streamed this game on my Twitch channel. My original plan was to stream Huge Adventure and N-Tranced, but I just thought that I should just play the games on my own for faster progress on this video. But in case you're interested, you can check out that if you want to see legitimate rage moments. Oh, thank God. You vicarious visions. Your entire development team sucks. And while I'm shamelessly promoting my Twitch, you can also check out my Twitch in the description by clicking on this card. I'm currently streaming the Sonic Advance trilogy as I'm writing this video. I also export them onto my second channel, which is also in the description, and you can also click on this card. I promise it will be worth it because stuff like this can happen. Alright. That's it for Sandover Village. Look at Jack checking out Kira's butt.
He's thick! Boy! That's a thick ass boy!
Anyway, back to the video. The Death Tornado Spin also feels a little bit neutered in this game because you can't reach the places you can in Crash 3. And the double jump also feels kind of finicky because sometimes it works well, but other times the game just doesn't register my input whatsoever. To be fair, Crash 3 did have timing issues on the double jump in that game, but here it just works when it wants to sometimes. The underwater levels are still the same from Crash 3, and to be fair, I never would like the underwater levels in that game, so yeah. And finally there's the jetpack levels. Don't worry, they're nothing like the ones from Crash 2, or like the airplane levels from Crash 3. You try to shoot down blimps and try to avoid everything Cortex enemies throw at you. These levels are fine, but that perception kinda messes me up and makes me miss a lot of boxes. It's not exactly the game's fault, it's more about the hardware the game is running on. Now the gems pretty much work the same way they did in the other games, break every box and you get them. The color gems even make a return here, but since there's only 20 levels, there's only 4 color gems. The relics also come back here too, acting just like they did in Crash 3. You need them to fight the true final boss, this abomination of God. This basically makes Cortex, Tiny Tiger, Dingodile, and Engine, turning them into this thing. Technically, you don't even fight it, you just run away from it. But I admit it's kind of cool that this is the only fight in the series that utilizes a Crash dash other than getting the relics. But now this brings us to Crash Bandicoot N-Tranced. The story starts off with Uka Uka scolding Cortex of his incompetence once again. But this time he calls in the Ferris Trophy returned from Crash 3. He calls in this guy named N-Tranced who reminds me a lot of Humpty Dumpty from Puss in Boots for some reason. He kidnaps Coco and Crunch and hypnotizes him. He almost got Crash, but Aku Aku got him before he can get sucked into the portal, and now they just have fake Crash. That is a very weird way into making fake Crash an actual character in this game, but whatever. Going from level to level now is kind of like the islands of Crash 1 mixed with Super Mario World's Overworld. You can't choose what level you want to play through unless you unlock another path. Now this game is more or less the same as Huge Adventure with a couple of differences. I mean, if you were to put these two games side to side, you would be forgiven not recognizing which is which. But there's still things added that keeps N-Tranced from being a complete clone of Huge Adventure. Crash now has a double jump by default now, although it still works like his last game, meaning it still has the same control problems. Crash still gets new power-ups after beating a boss, and 2 of the 4 are actually new. First is the super slide that makes you slide about 10 feet, but if you're too careless, you collide into a TNT crate or Nitro crate. And there's this rocket jump, which makes Crash jump like he's on the moon. You can't do anything after you activate it, but it is helpful for those hard to reach boxes. There's also new level types in this game too. There's a water board you ride on while you escape away from the shark. It's pretty much a chase level, so you know what to expect at this point. The ball rolling levels come back from Wrath of Cortex, but I haven't really played Wrath of Cortex yet, but I heard that the ball rolling levels in that game were kind of fun, but in here, I don't know, the ball rolling levels in this game aren't really good. The controls are just a little bit too loose, and it's kind of hard to tell what's a border and what's not. And it's also really easy for you to lose control and roll off the edge of a cliff, or gain too much momentum and accidentally roll off the edge of a ramp and die. I'm not exactly raging about this because there wasn't any rolling level where I attempted to not use the brake button and to not gain too much speed. Also, did anyone else find it kind of funny how whenever you're playing these levels, Crash or Crunch are T-posing while in the ball? Like, something about Crash and Crunch's position in these just looks so weird that I can't keep my eyes off it. The boss fights were an improvement over the first game. I mean, 2 of the 4 were. Crunch and Coco were pretty standard as a boss fight, but the fake Crash fight was actually pretty good. He mirrors your exact movements, so you have to force him into stage hazards to kill him. He actually managed to get me a couple times. N-Tranced is personally my favorite boss in this game. The first phase isn't really that special, you just wait for him to jump near you and you attack him. But then you get to the second phase, you have to spin him into his lava gate with fake Crash pulling the lever since he's one of the good guys now for some reason. But while you're doing it, you have to dodge all these projectiles he throws at you. He got me at least 14 times before I can finally beat him. In terms of completion, it's mostly the same, power crystals and box gems, but there's also these gem shards which are just a replacement for the color gems. They basically work like the color gems, you go into a secret route and collect them, so yeah. You actually use these to form color gems and are actually required to get to the true final boss, which is N-Trophy, and it's just a recreation of his boss from Crash 3, but in 2D. N-Tranced also has multiplayer, but you need a link cable, and I wouldn't be able to do that anyway since I'm playing off an emulator, so yeah. Now Crash Nitro Kart on GBA kind of surprised me because this game was actually better than it had right to be. Since portable ports of console games are usually known for being shameless versions of their console counterpart, but ironically, the console version of Crash Nitro Kart had mixed to average reviews compared to the GBA version, which had pretty positive reviews. I never really played the console version of the game, so I can't really say if it's good or not, and the same goes for Crash Tag Team Racing, but to be honest, it doesn't really look like I'm missing that much anyway. But yeah, I can say that this is actually a pretty solid game. I mean, it's nowhere near as good as the original CTR, but it's still a pretty good kart racer. The game is pretty easy since the layout's pretty flat and have no shortcuts and barely any sharp turns. The adventure mode is pretty much the same as the original for PS1. There's 4 worlds where you race and then you face off against the boss afterwards. The story of the game goes like this. Crash and the other characters get abducted by Emperor Velo. If they don't race for him, he'll destroy their entire planet as opposed to just turning it into a parking lot. The racing mechanics are the same as before. Drift 3 times to get a power boost. You throw items to the front and back to attack other racers from winning the race before you do. I just have to say something about how drifting works in this game. In CTR, when you drift, you have to press one trigger to drift and the other trigger to activate the boost, but in this game, you have to press R and then press A 3 times to activate the boost, which is fine enough, but just that I'm so used to playing CTR and consoles at this point that my mind automatically tells me to press L and R. I adapted to it the more I played the game, so it's not that big of a deal. This game looks pretty good for Kart Racer on GBA. When the track's moving, it kind of strains my eyes a little bit, but it's Gameboy Advance, so you can't really expect quality draw distance. Also, Spyro's in this game, so I just wanted to point that out. This is a solid game. It's weird since The Huge Adventure, N-Tranced, and Nitro Kart GBA were all made by Vicarious Visions, the same developers who made the N-Tranced trilogy and the Tony Hawk 1 and 2 remakes. So it was clear that since 2002, Vicarious Visions knew what they were doing with the Crash Bandicoot IP in their hands, even though I probably won't play these games ever again after this video. These are still pretty good games. However, so this game was supposed to be a crossover of Crash and Spyro split into two games, Crash Purple, Ripto's Rampage, and Spyro Orange, The Cortex Conspiracy. This was the game I was dreading the most to play because I heard so many bad things about this game and Spyro Orange and other people's reviews. Normally, I would try to go into a game with an open mind and not just praising it or hating it just because someone else said it was great or bad. After playing this, I can officially say that this game blows. This is how the story goes. Cortex and Ripto are essentially best friends now because the game doesn't even bother to explain how these universes collided and just act like they've been here this entire time, but whatever. They team up to take Crash and Spyro down by putting on Crash and Spyro masks on their henchmen, and they actually fall for this. At first glance, this game kind of looks like another sequel to the platforming games, but after you go into the first level, that's hardly the case. Someone in the development team thought it would have been a great idea to just make the Crash and Spyro crossover that every fan was hyped up for into a monotonous minigame collection. Like, just imagine being a kid in 2004 excited for this game, only to find out that you wasted your money on shitty minigames. The commercials made them look cool, but in reality, they're just trash.
That's my character. I'm the trash man. I come out, I throw trash all over the game.
I'm gonna be honest, guys. I couldn't finish this game. By the time I got to the Tiny Tiger boss fight, I was ready to rage quit, but for some godforsaken reason, I kept on pushing at the risk of my sanity. But then when I got to the last jetpack level, I just gave in. The minigames were just either infuriating or just plain boring. Not to mention that they're repetitive as hell too. Most of the minigames are just reskins of other ones with the same shitty controls. Some of the minigames can be these crate challenges, which can be fun. Wish they could have made the entire game like this. And these other minigames, which are the absolute bane of my existence. You got this waterboard thing, which is really easy for you to lose control and accidentally hit an obstacle or a nitro crate. Then there's this jetpack, which somehow controls worse than the one in Crash 2. At least the jetpack in that game was somewhat manageable. Here's just way too heavy and moves too slow. And then there's this goddamn tank, which is too clunky and slow, making the Tiny Tiger fight more frustrating than it should be. There's also these cards, but I don't really know what they do, and I doubt that they give you anything if you collect them all. Like, I just don't get it. How did Vicarious Vision go from two pretty good side-scrollers to this game? Also, how come Crash has the double jump by default but not the slide? I just found that a really weird thing to omit, and I don't really see anyone else bringing this up in their review, so I kind of want to point that out. And apparently Spyro Orange is infinitely worse. I guess I'll take a look at that game for this year's Spyro month, or not. I'm not really in any rush to play that game, since it's basically the same as Crash Purple. Now we'll get to the final game for this video, Crash of the Titans GBA. This game was released at the very end of Game Boy Advance's life cycle. This was the first and last Crash GBA game to not be made by Vicarious Visions. This time it was a studio called Amaze Entertainment. I did not honestly think that this would be how I would experience this game for the first time. But who knows? I've heard some positive things about Crash of the Titans on the console, so maybe this version might be good. God damn it. Alright, let's go over the story. Aku Aku gets kidnapped and Cortex wants to take over the world. That's pretty much it. This game's opening actually looks pretty good by GBA standards. The sprites are slightly above average and they aren't just static images. I'm actually kind of looking forward to this game now.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that?
Okay, I know it can't be too judgmental since this is a Game Boy Advance game, but that's not really an excuse considering this game looks way worse than the game that came out 5 years before it did. Anyway, there's not really that much to talk about. The game's just a generic beat 'em up. The only way to go from one level to another is just by button mashing. You can also possess titans, but that doesn't really make the game any more fun. The gems and crystals are here, but they don't do anything as far as I know. There's also these masks, but I don't know what they do. The game is pretty slow and clunky, levels go on for too long, and the game is just monotonous. All you do is jump, punch, jack titans, repeat. Honestly, this game doesn't really frustrate me on the level as Crash Purple did, but it's just one of the most boring games I've ever played because of how repetitive it gets. I just have nothing else to say about this game. It's just a complete chore to get through. Honestly, it's the fact that this game doesn't include stupid mini games that don't put this game LOL Crash Purple. I just hope the console game isn't as repetitive as this version. So yeah, those are all the Crash games that were released on the Game Boy Advance. This was a pretty interesting trip to say the least. These games were pretty much varied in quality, as much as I thought they would be. Some of them were good, some of them were bad, and others just made you want to die on the spot. Crash GBA career was the definition of a hit and miss, but to be honest, it's kind of impressive how out of the 5 games that were on this console, only 2 of them were terrible. But yeah, I really recommend these games if you want to know what the PS1 games would have been like if they were side-scrollers. Even how basic of a kart racer Nitro Kart GBA is, it's actually a pretty solid title, although avoid these games, like don't even look at them. There's really no good reason to get them unless out of complete curiosity, or just to say that you have them. But anyway, that's all for this video. If you liked it, subscribe and leave a like because 3/4 of my viewers aren't subscribed, so it would help out a lot. Join the Discord server if you want to chat with me, follow me on Twitter and Instagram for any updates on video progress, and of course, follow the Twitch for more gaming content. I stream there every weekend, so yeah. Anyway, with that out of the way, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.